I did not hesitate. I arranged a leave of absence from my job and moved back to Philadelphia to be with her. Those final months were both heartbreaking and precious. As the cancer weakened her body, she seemed to grow stronger in spirit. We had long conversations about life forgiveness and finding peace. Not once did she express bitterness about her circumstances or the way my father had treated her. "Life is too short to carry around anger," she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from her small porch. "I have had a good life, Judith. I have you, and that has been my greatest joy." She passed away peacefully 6 months ago with me holding her hand. She left me everything she had, which was modest but meaningful. Her small house savings of about $60,000 in family heirlooms passed down through generations of her family. Most precious among these was her mother's antique mahogany desk, which had always held a place of honor in every home she lived in. At the funeral, I was shocked to see my father and Jennifer arrive just as the service was beginning. He had not visited Mother once during her illness, claiming busy court schedules and important cases. Yet here he was dressed impeccably in a black suit, expressing condolences to people he had not spoken to in years. After the service, he approached me as I stood receiving condolences from Mother's friends and colleagues. "Judith, I am sorry for your loss," he said formally as if we were mere acquaintances. "Your mother was a good woman." I thanked him stiffly, wanting him to leave so I could grieve in peace. Then he added something that sent a chill through me. "We should discuss the estate soon. I have concerns about Grace Bennett's mental state in her final months. The medication, it affects decision. Before I could respond, he handed me his business card and walked away, leaving me stunned by his implication. It was only later that I understood what he was doing. My father was laying groundwork to contest the will to take even the little that Mother had managed to build after the divorce. This was the beginning of a nightmare that would consume the next 6 months of my life, a legal battle that would reveal secrets neither of us could have imagined. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received formal notice that the will would be read at the office of Mother's litigator, Harold Green. I arrived early, composing myself in the reception area of the small law practice. Father arrived precisely on time, accompanied by Gerald Thompson, a shark-like litigator known for aggressive probate litigation. The reading itself was straightforward. Mother had left everything to me with specific mentions of family heirlooms and her wish that I use the modest inheritance to build a life filled with purpose and joy. Her will had been properly executed and witnessed 6 months before her diagnosis when she was undeniably of sound mind. As Harold finished reading, Father cleared his throat. "I will be contesting this will," he announced as Thompson handed Harold a thick folder of documents. My former wife was not mentally competent to make these decisions. Furthermore, I have evidence that significant assets in her possession were acquired during our marriage and were incorrectly distributed during the divorce settlement. Harold appeared surprised, but maintained his professional demeanor. "Of course, Mr. Parker, you have the right to contest, but I should inform you that Grace Bennett anticipated this possibility and ensured all documentation was in perfect order." My father merely smiled. "We will let the court decide, shall we?" I left the meeting feeling blindsided and angry. Mother had warned me that Father might try something, but I had dismissed her concerns as overly cautious. Now I realized she had known him better than I did. The next day, I contacted Sarah Goldstein, a former law school classmate who specialized in probate law. Claire Donovan's hands tremble as the courtroom falls silent. The faint scent of rain drifts in through the cracked window, mixing with the sterile air and the low hum of the city outside. Judge Mitchell's gavel rests unanswered. Across the table, Richard Sullivan leans forward, his smirk deepening. Beside him, Gerald Thompson's eyes narrow, cold, calculating. His voice drops to a sharp whisper, slicing through the stillness. "Ms. Donovan, did you ever manipulate your mother's will?" The question hangs in the air like a thunderclap. Shadows flicker beneath the dim courtroom lights. Claire swallows hard, the weight of 6 grueling months pressing down on her. This moment could undo everything: her fight, her family, her truth. Outside, the distant city noise fades into a deafening pause. Is this the moment the scales tip? Will justice prevail? Or will decades of family secrets stay buried? For 8 long hours, Claire sat under the relentless fire of Thompson's questions. They probed every detail: her mother's medication, daily habits, even intimate conversations during the illness. Every word twisted to suggest doubt. "Did you ever suggest changes to the will?" Thompson repeated, though the document was finalized years before the illness. "Did you administer her medication?" He pushed, hinting at something darker. Her father watched silently, whispering instructions to Thompson, never meeting Claire's gaze. Each court session drained her, mentally, financially, emotionally. The mounting legal fees felt like chains tightening around her future. Judge Mitchell's clear bias was almost a cruel joke, the kind that made even the court reporter exchange uneasy glances. "Claire, we have to be realistic," Sarah Goldstein said after another brutal day. "Judge Mitchell isn't just biased, he's stacked against you. Your father's connections mean this fight isn't fair. You could lose everything, and owe him money on top of that." Claire's chest tightened. "What can I do?" "Very little," Sarah admitted. "We've preserved every objection for appeal. But appeals cost time and money, and with your father's influence, there's no guarantee." That night, Claire walked through the city streets, the rustle of leaves underfoot and distant car horns echoing her turmoil. The final hearing loomed next week. All signs pointed to defeat. Her father was poised to claim not just an inheritance, but to erase her mother's legacy. The system wasn't broken. It was weaponized. Yet, somewhere deep inside, Claire's resolve hardened. If the law was a battlefield, she would fight, not just for what was hers, but for the truth buried beneath the lies. The question now wasn't just who would win, but what price justice demanded. That night, Claire Donovan sat quietly in her mother's modest Philadelphia living room. The soft hum of the city outside felt distant, like a world she no longer belonged to. The house smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, a fragile comfort amid the storm she faced. This place held her mother's peace. Soon it might belong to her father, Richard Sullivan, who showed no sign of mercy or sentiment. The thought crushed her. How could she fight a battle where the rules were rigged, where every move seemed stacked against her? Tears welled up, but she forced herself to breathe. Tonight was her last chance, to find something real, something that could turn the tide. As she moved from room to room, Claire touched the familiar: her mother's hand-knit scarf, worn from chemotherapy, the jewelry box heavy with memories, and the soft rustle of pages from her mother's favorite books. In the quiet bedroom, the scent of mothballs mixed with lingering hope. Her fingers traced the antique mahogany desk in the home office, a relic passed down through generations. It was polished weekly by her mother, locked tight with a special key. Claire had sifted through its contents before: papers, stationery, the mundane remnants of a life interrupted. But now, as she wiped the surface, her cloth snagged on something hidden beneath. She knelt down, heart pounding, and spotted an almost invisible wooden knob tucked under the desk's edge. Her breath hitched. With trembling fingers, she pulled it. A secret compartment creaked open, revealing a dusty, forgotten box. The faint scent of old paper and mothballs filled the air. Inside, a sealed envelope, worn but intact, called to her. Hands shaking, Claire broke the seal. There, in her mother's handwriting, was a letter, a confession that reframed everything. The letter revealed a truth long buried, one that challenged the story Claire had built her fight upon. Richard Sullivan, the man she believed was the villain, might not be the enemy after all. The room seemed colder. The walls felt like they were closing in. Claire's world shifted beneath her feet. Every certainty twisted into doubt. What if her battle wasn't against her father, but something far more complicated? What if justice demanded a price she hadn't yet imagined? For a long moment, she sat in silence. The rain began tapping softly against the window, the scent of wet leaves filling the air. Claire stared at the letter, the weight of her mother's words pressing down. The fight was no longer just legal, it was personal, and the path forward was more tangled than ever. But one thing was clear: Claire Donovan was far from done. The dim light flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Claire's breath caught. The heavy air smelled of old paper, dust, and something colder, secrets long buried. Her fingers trembled as she reached into a hidden compartment she never knew existed beneath the antique desk. She pulled out a yellowed manila envelope, tied tight with a faded red string. Heart pounding, she peeled it open. Inside were official documents stamped with government seals, black and white photos, and a small leather-bound journal. Names jumped off the page. Her mother, Grace Bennett Marie Kessler, listed as a naval communications specialist with high-level clearance. Claire's mind raced. Her mother had never said a word about military service. Photos showed a younger Grace Bennett in uniform, standing alongside two men Claire recognized instantly: her father, Richard Sullivan, and Judge Mitchell. The journal's neat handwriting, dated from 1987 to 1989, revealed Grace Bennett's escalating doubts about the work she was trapped in. One line pierced Claire's soul. T and W have expanded surveillance beyond authorized targets. National security supersedes conventional constraints. T and W, her father and the judge locked in her legal battle. Claire's world shifted again. Was everything she believed a lie? Was her fight really against her father, or a deeper, darker betrayal she hadn't yet uncovered? The room felt colder. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window, carrying the scent of wet leaves, stirring a restless chill in her bones. She closed the journal with a slow breath. How much had her mother sacrificed? And for what? Claire Donovan knew one thing. The truth was far from simple, but she was ready to follow it, no matter where it led. In the dimly lit room, the weight of silence pressed down, thick and suffocating. Philip's eyes locked onto mine, sharp, unreadable, cycling between restraint and something darker. The faint scent of rain drifted through the cracked window, mixing with the rustle of dry leaves outside. The city sounds faded to nothing but the relentless tick of an old clock on the wall. My breath caught, heart pounding wildly. Would Philip finally spill the truth buried deep within my mother's journal? Or would his silence slam the door on any hope for justice? I couldn't look away. Not now, not after everything. I broke the silence. I know about Operation Kingfisher, and what your role was, along with my father's and Judge Mitchell's. Philip blinked slowly, expression unreadable, but his shoulders tensed. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I pulled out the photos, faded images of my mother, Philip, my father, and the judge. I laid them carefully on the scratched tabletop. She's here too, and so are you. Philip's eyes flicked over the photos, not quite meeting mine, his face blank. Many people work together. That doesn't prove anything. His voice was calm, but the cold edge beneath it was unmistakable. I reached for my mother's journal and flipped to the last page, watching his eyes narrow. She mentioned you, said you got pushed out for questioning their methods. For the first time, a flicker of old anger flashed in Philip's gaze, quickly hidden like a shadow pulled back into darkness. Your mother was one of the few who had real integrity, he said quietly. If she kept those records, she had reason. A pause. Then, studying me carefully, what do you want from me? I met his stare head-on. The truth. My father is using his ties with Judge Mitchell to wipe me out of everything Mom left behind. I need to know what happened in Operation Kingfisher, what gave Mom the leverage to threaten them. Philip was silent, weighing his next move. Then, with a heavy sigh, he sank into the chair across from me. "Does the phrase, 'Autumn's Sentinel,' mean anything to you?" I asked, watching closely. His head snapped up, eyes suddenly sharp, focused. "Where did you hear that?" "It was in Mom's journal," I said. She called it a verification code, a proof of her knowledge and involvement. Without a word, Philip stood and moved to a dusty cabinet in the corner. He pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses, pouring generous measures before sliding one across to me. I hesitated, then took it. The warmth was instant, but the tension stayed. He began quietly, as if the walls might be listening. "Operation Kingfisher started back in 1987. Claire Donovan's mind drifts back to a humid summer evening in her childhood Philadelphia home. The heavy scent of rain mingles with the faint clink of ice in her father Richard's glass. From the study, muffled voices hum low, careful, almost conspiratorial. The stale smoke of tobacco wraps the room like a shadow, and in that moment, a cold, thick file slides into her small hands. Her father's sharp eyes meet hers, ambition barely veiled beneath practiced politeness. The weight of what she was handed pressed down on her young heart, sparking a confusing ache. Could she trust the man she called Dad? Or did she already sense the truth lurking beneath the surface? That night marked the beginning of a silent war, one she would fight to win, no matter the cost. Years later, Claire sits across from Philip, the ex-ally turned reluctant witness. He takes a slow sip, eyes clouded with years of regret. "The official mission was monitoring foreign agents," he says, voice low, careful. "All legal, warrants, oversight." He pauses. "Your father and Judge Mitchell. Legal advisors, ambitious, connected." Philip glances down as he continues. "But 6 months in, they started pushing boundaries, not through channels, gathering info on powerful Americans." Claire leans forward. "For what? Blackmail?" Philip nods slowly. "Leverage, to climb higher." Unsettling. But how? They controlled oversight. The system worked for them. When Philip questioned it, he was reassigned. Her mother stayed, trapped by her expertise. He sighs deeply. By '89, it was a full network. Then, the moment everything changed. A journalist sniffed around. Too close. The plan was a simple break-in. But it went wrong. The journalist died. Ruled accidental. Claire shivers, the cold truth settling in like a shadow that never leaves. Could justice prevail when the system itself was corrupt? Claire Donovan's hand trembles as she holds the classified document, its weight almost crushing her spirit. Outside, the late Philadelphia sun filters through the high-rise window, casting long, sharp shadows across the room. A distant siren wails, slicing through the hum of city noise, echoing the chaos inside her. The faint scent of rain lingers in the air, mixing with the rustle of leaves brushing against the glass. Her phone buzzes, an unknown number lighting up the screen like a warning. What if this truth destroys everything she's built? Can she stand against the tides of power and family loyalty? Or will the secrets finally tip the scales of justice? "These are authentication phrases that will convince them you have full access," Philip whispered, handing over the papers. His eyes were grim. Only someone with the real logs would know these details. Hope flickered in Claire's chest, for the first time in months. Could this be the leverage that forces them to back down? These men, seasoned insiders, built their careers on lies and silence. The threat alone might shake them. But Philip warned, this info's still classified. Using it risks everything. Your career, your freedom. "I don't care," Claire said, steady and fierce. "They left me no choice." He nodded, approval tinged with caution. "Your mother had the same steel. Your fight is as much hers as it is yours. Be subtle. Hint, don't expose. Let them fill in their own guilty blanks." The drive back through Philadelphia was a blur. Claire's mind a battlefield of exhilaration and fear. That night she met Sarah, her sharp-eyed litigator. When Claire laid out the plan, careful not to reveal the sensitive details, Sarah's eyes went wide. "This is explosive," she said quietly, "but reckless. If you reveal classified info in court, you could be in serious trouble." Philip's advice echoed. "Imply without stating outright." Claire explained enough to suggest they held the leverage without naming names or details. Sarah weighed the risk. "We'll start with clean legal arguments," she said. "If Judge Mitchell's bias sinks us, then you hint at your knowledge, your secret ace." They worked late, drafting 2 plans, one safe, one daring. Sarah's worry filled the room. "Are you sure you want to open this door? Once it's cracked, there's no sealing it again." Claire met her gaze, eyes firm. "I'm sure. My mother protected them for years. I won't." Outside, the city whispered secrets, and Claire Donovan felt the fragile line between justice and ruin stretch thin, ready to snap with the next move. In the quiet before the storm, Claire Donovan stood alone in the courthouse vestibule. The heavy wooden doors loomed ahead, muffling the low buzz of voices inside. Outside, the crisp morning air tasted faintly of rain, carrying the scent of wet leaves rustling underfoot. Her breath formed small clouds, mixing with the tension thick in her chest. Every heartbeat echoed fear, resolve, determination. Then her phone buzzed sharply, slicing through the silence. She glanced down, eyes narrowing. A new message, urgent, unexpected. Would this revelation finally crack the case wide open? Or would it unravel everything she'd fought for? The answer hung just out of reach. She had chosen silence before. When they tore her family apart, when they tried to erase what little was left, she stayed quiet. But not this time. Not when they aimed to steal what her mother had quietly rebuilt. Sitting alone that night in her mother's modest living room, surrounded by faded photographs and worn furniture, Claire wrestled with doubt. Had her mother's silence shielded her, or only protected the men who didn't deserve it? She'd never know for sure. But tomorrow, in that courtroom, Claire would write her own story. No matter the cost, nothing would be the same again. The morning arrived cold and clear. Claire dressed with care, navy suit pressed sharp, hair pulled back tight into a bun. Her fingers trembled briefly as she fastened her mother's pearl earrings, simple and unassuming, the only jewelry she ever wore. In the mirror, Claire met her own eyes, no longer worn down by months of loss, but burning with a fierce resolve. Sarah, her trusted litigator, was already waiting, papers spread out like a shield on the table. Their plan was clear: fight with every legitimate legal argument they had. Sarah's voice was steady but cautious. "We hold the cards close. The information you have, it's a last resort. We see how Judge Mitchell handles this first." Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters whispered, hungry for the drama. Claire's father and his lead litigator arrived, exuding confidence in tailored suits, flanked by a small army of junior attorneys. He smiled at the press, comfortable as ever in the spotlight. Inside, the tension thickened. Father approached, Thompson at his side, their eyes locking with Claire's. The battle was about to begin. Would the truth finally break through the walls of power and family loyalty? Or would it be swallowed by secrets meant to stay buried? "Judith," he acknowledged coolly, "I hope you have reconsidered your position. There is still time to reach a settlement that would be less public and painful for everyone." "You mean less painful for you?" I replied evenly. "No, I have not reconsidered." Something in my tone made him study me more carefully. "This pointless resistance only depletes what little your mother left you. Judge Wilson has made his perspective quite clear throughout these proceedings." "Yes, he certainly has." I agreed. His bias has been remarkably transparent. Father frowned slightly at my calm demeanor. He had expected fear or resignation, not this steady confidence. Before he could respond, the bailiff called our case and we filed into the courtroom. Judge Mitchell already sat at the bench reviewing documents with a stern expression. He barely glanced up as we entered, but I noticed him exchange a quick look with my father, a silent confirmation of their predetermined outcome. We will hear final arguments in the matter of Parker versus Parker Wilson announced. Mr. Thompson, you may proceed first. Thompson approached the podium with practiced confidence. For the next 40 minutes he presented a masterful distortion of reality, painting my mother as emotionally unstable and financially irresponsible. He claimed she had manipulated her doctors into believing she was mentally competent while making irrational decisions about her estate. Your Honor, we have testimony from multiple sources indicating Grace Bennett Parker's judgment was compromised during her illness, Thompson declared. Though these sources were largely people who had never met my mother during her illness, he presented fabricated evidence suggesting Mother's assets rightfully belonged to my father, conveniently ignoring the divorce settlement that had already addressed these claims years earlier. Throughout Thompson's presentation, Judge Mitchell nodded appreciatively, occasionally asking questions that helped strengthen their narrative. Not once did he challenge even the most outrageous assertions. When Sarah finally took her turn, the contrast was stark. Wilson interrupted her, repeatedly questioning basic facts and demanding documentation we had already submitted multiple times. When she attempted to point out inconsistencies in Thompson's arguments, Wilson cut her off. The court is well aware of the facts in this case, Counselor. Please confine yourself to relevant arguments, he said dismissively. Sarah persisted, admirably presenting our witnesses who testified to Mother's mental clarity until her final days. Dr. Susan Reynolds, Mother's oncologist, stated unequivocally that while the cancer had weakened her physically, her mental faculties remained sharp throughout treatment. In my professional opinion, Dr. Reynolds testified Grace Bennett Parker was fully competent to make financial and legal decisions until the very end of her life. Wilson visibly frowned at this testimony, then questioned Dr. Reynolds aggressively about the potential side effects of pain medications, clearly fishing for any possible way to discount her professional assessment. Each of our witnesses faced similar treatment, their credibility attacked by both Wilson and Thompson. Meanwhile, Father sat at his table looking increasingly smug as the hearing progressed exactly as he had expected. By mid-afternoon, my frustration had reached its peak. Sarah had presented a compelling case that would have convinced any impartial judge, but Wilson was clearly preparing to rule against us, regardless of the evidence. After the final witness, Wilson looked at his watch impatiently. I believe I have heard sufficient testimony to render judgment in this matter. Sarah stood quickly. Your Honor, my client wishes to provide testimony regarding her mother's state of mind and intentions. Wilson waved his hand dismissively. I see no need for additional testimony. The courtroom fell silent, thick with tension, and then I stepped forward. My voice cut through the stillness. Autumn Sentinel, Operation Kingfisher. You could see it. Judge Mitchell's face drained of color. His gavel slipped from numb fingers clattering on the bench, breaking the ritual of control. Across the room, my father, Richard Sullivan, half rose, disbelief twisting his features. How did I know that? A cold, confused hush swept through the spectators. No one understood the weight of those words, except me. I found my mother's files, I said, steady but sharp. Detailed records, authentication codes, logs with timestamps. The judge gripped the bench like a lifeline, struggling to mask his faltering authority. This is highly irregular, he stammered. We must clear the courtroom. I met his gaze. Why? Is there something about these codes? Something linking you to my father? A conflict of interest? The opposing litigator, Thompson, jumped in, sharp but uncertain. Your Honor, this is a distraction from the case. My father's voice cracked through the air. Claire, stop this now. You don't know what you're doing. I turned to him, every word deliberate. Actually, I do. The courtroom buzzed with unsettled energy as the recess was called. Claire Donovan's heart pounded in her chest. Her eyes locked onto her father's retreating figure, Richard Sullivan, his usual calm shattered, replaced by something raw and exposed. The cold air outside was thick with tension, heavy like the scent of rain just before a storm. Around her, whispers of reporters grew louder, their voices carrying questions and the weight of truths still buried beneath layers of lies. Every instinct screamed that what came next would change everything. Justice, family, loyalty, all hanging by the thinnest of threads. Inside, the walls seemed to close in. Richard's face, once a mask of control, flickered with doubt. Claire's mind raced. How did her discovery, those secret files, the hidden codes, shake the entire courtroom? Could she really bring down the man who raised her? The lines between right and wrong blurred with every passing second. Was this victory? Or the start of something far more complicated? Outside the courtroom, chaos was unfolding. Reporters swarmed, phones lit up, conversations buzzed with speculation. Claire and her litigator, Sarah, slipped through the crowd to a quiet room. Sarah's voice was calm but edged with awe. That was either the boldest move or the most reckless thing I've ever seen. Claire didn't answer. Her mind was already racing ahead. Then, a sharp knock. A court officer stepped in, his expression tight. "Miss Donovan, your father and Mr. Thompson request to speak with you immediately." Sarah moved to block him. "My client will not meet without proper legal representation." But Claire surprised them all. "Actually," she said, her voice steady, "I'll go." What would she say? What would she risk? The next move could change everything, or shatter what little was left. "I'll meet with my father. Alone. No one else." Sarah pulled me aside, her voice low but urgent. "Claire, this is dangerous. Anything you say can and will be used against you." I looked her straight in the eye. "I need this conversation. It has to be private." After a tense pause, we agreed. I'd see him in the conference room. Sarah would wait just outside. 10 minutes later, the door clicked shut behind him. The man who strode in wasn't the same titan who'd ruled the courtroom for months. Richard Sullivan looked older, worn, his usual mask cracked, revealing something raw beneath. "What have you done?" His voice was steady but cold, like ice under pressure. "I found Mom's insurance policy," I said, "the one she kept to protect herself, from you and Judge Mitchell." He moved to the window, the city's gray skyline blurred by the rain outside. "You don't understand what you're messing with," he said, voice low. "This goes beyond family. This is national security." "No," I corrected him, stepping closer. "It's national security you and Mitchell twisted for your own gain." He spun back, eyes sharp. "Who else knows?" "Enough people," I said, holding his gaze. "I know about the illegal surveillance, the journalist who died, and you covered it up. You and Mitchell used stolen information to build your empires." His face paled at the mention of the journalist. "You don't have the context. It was wartime. We made tough calls, for the greater good." "For the greater good," I echoed, voice tight. "Is that what you call ruining Mom during the divorce? Taking everything because she left you?" The silence stretched, thick with years of betrayal and unspoken truths. Then his guarded expression softened. Just a flicker. He leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "The insurance was never just about her. It was meant to expose something bigger. Corruption tied to powerful allies. People you don't want to cross." Suddenly, this wasn't just a courtroom battle. It was a dangerous unraveling. Loyalties twisted, betrayals deeper than I imagined. The line between enemy and ally blurred. Who was the real adversary? And what price would I pay to find out? Claire Donovan's mind drifts back to a chilly autumn evening in their old family home. The scent of burnt wood lingers from the fireplace, mixing with the faint trace of her mother's lavender perfume. She feels again the tight grip of her mother's hand. warm yet fragile, while whispered words slipped through trembling lips. "Promise me," her mother had said, voice soft but urgent. The creak of the floorboards beneath them, the faint rustle of leaves outside, and distant city sounds anchor this memory deep within Claire's heart. It's not just a memory, it's a call to action, to honor her mother's true wishes, to fight for the justice that feels long overdue. Now, standing face to face with her father, Richard Sullivan, the weight of the past crashes down. He smirks. "What do you want, Claire? Money? A settlement? Just say the word, and we end this today." Claire's voice is steady. "I want what Mom wanted. Justice. Respect for her final wishes. Drop all claims against her estate. Publicly acknowledge her will. Apologize for calling her mentally incompetent." Laughter, short, bitter, escapes her father's lips. "And if I refuse," he asks, eyes cold, "you'll go public with classified information, risk prosecution, destroy both our careers." Claire meets his gaze without flinching. "If necessary." She pauses, steady. "Mom protected you for years, at great personal cost. I won't make the same mistake." For the first time, his mask cracks, a flicker of fear buried beneath years of control. "You don't understand what it was like back then," he admits, voice low. "The pressure, the opportunities. It started small, information to secure better positions, advance careers. Wilson and I believed we were doing the right thing, serving our country by putting the right people in power." Claire prompts him gently. "What about the journalist?" Her father sinks into a chair, exhaustion washing over him. "I miscalculated. That break-in was meant to be simple intelligence gathering. No one was supposed to get hurt." "But someone did," Claire says, voice barely above a whisper. "He died," Richard confirms, voice heavy with regret. "After that, there was no going back. We were all implicated. Careers, reputations, freedom on the line. We protected each other, buried the truth, built your success on a foundation of lies," Claire states, the truth cutting sharp. Her father remains silent. Claire's words land harder. "Your mother knew everything. She could have destroyed us, and especially you, during the divorce. I never understood why she didn't." Richard's gaze falters. Claire's voice softens but is firm. "Because she was better than you. She cared about more than just winning." We sat in silence for a long moment, years of tension and secrets hanging between us. "What happens now?" he finally asked. "You withdraw all claims against Mother's estate. You issue a public statement acknowledging her competence and apologizing for suggesting otherwise. You ensure Judge Mitchell recuses himself from this case, and in return, the information stays buried where Mother kept it all these years." After another long silence, Father nodded slowly. "I will need to speak with Wilson." "Do that," I said, rising to indicate our conversation was over. "But understand, this is not negotiable. By this time tomorrow, I want all claims withdrawn and a new judge assigned, or I go public with everything I have." When I rejoined Sarah in the hallway, she studied my face carefully. "Did you get what you needed?" "I think so," I replied. "We will know soon enough." We returned to the courtroom to find it in disarray. A court administrator had arrived and was speaking with the clerk. Judge Mitchell was nowhere to be seen. The Honorable Judge Mitchell has recused himself from this case, citing a personal conflict the administrator announced when she noticed our return. The matter will be reassigned to Judge Caroline Martinez. A new hearing will be scheduled within 14 days. As this announcement was made, Thompson approached us looking distinctly uncomfortable. "My client wishes to inform the court that he is withdrawing all claims, contesting the will of Grace Bennett Parker," he stated formally. "We will be filing the appropriate documentation this afternoon." Sarah looked at me in amazement. "Just like that, they are giving up their entire case." "Just like that," I confirmed, watching my father gather his things, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. The following days brought a whirlwind of developments. True to his word, Father filed formal documents, withdrawing all claims against Mother's estate. Claire Donovan stared out the rain-speckled window of the Center City, Philadelphia high-rise. The sharp scent of wet pavement mixed with the rustle of fallen leaves outside, quiet but heavy with tension. Her phone buzzed. The message was blunt. "I've agreed, but on my terms." Her father, Richard Sullivan, had just dropped a bombshell she never saw coming. After years locked in a ruthless legal battle over Grace Bennett Parker's estate, he was backing down. But why now? And what did he want in return? Claire's mind raced. Was this a truce, or the calm before a deeper storm? The silence between texts felt endless, but she couldn't let doubt freeze her. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere cracked with whispered disbelief. Judge Mitchell's calm voice cut through the murmurs. "Judge Mitchell has recused himself, effective immediately." A ripple passed through the chamber. How deep did this go? Claire's litigator, Sarah, leaned in. "They're folding, just like that." Claire kept her eyes on her father, who avoided every gaze, gathering his things with a withdrawal that felt like defeat and deceit all at once. Days later, her victory was official. The will was upheld, the estate in her hands. Yet relief was tangled with loss. The father she once respected was unraveling in the public eye, exposed as far more compromised than Claire could have imagined. Why had he risked everything? And what unseen ties had pulled Judge Mitchell out of the picture so suddenly? Questions spiraled faster than answers. A political blog ignited a firestorm, exposing a secret friendship and financial entanglements that cast a dark shadow over every case Judge Mitchell touched. The state bar opened an investigation into Richard's legal ethics. The Judicial Conduct Committee probed Wilson's past judgments. Everyone was watching. Claire felt the walls closing in. Family loyalty clashed with justice. Power played a brutal game, and she was trapped in the middle. How much more would surface? And was the truth really worth the cost? Her phone lit up again. New evidence, new threats. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Claire Donovan's mind drifted again to her father's study, the heavy scent of old leather and polished wood filling the air. The faint crackle of the fireplace mixed with his low, urgent voice. She could almost feel the conflicted ache in her chest, the sharp chill of betrayal under the warm glow of family portraits. Whispers of accusation, unspoken truths pressed on her skin like cold rain. How did loyalty twist into something so fragile? Could justice ever live alongside family secrets? Former clients and opposing parties stepped forward, each with stories of suspicious rulings and unsettling coincidences. I heard the panic in my father's voice one night. "This wasn't part of the deal. You promised discretion." "I have been discreet," I said truthfully. "I haven't spoken about the specifics of what Mom left behind. But you and Wilson built careers on manipulation and secrecy. Did you really think this would stay buried once questions started rising?" Within weeks, Judge Mitchell stepped down, citing health, but no one believed it. The Judicial Conduct Committee's preliminary report made his position impossible to keep. My father's law partners smelled disaster and moved swiftly to erase his name from the firm. Longtime clients fled. His carefully crafted reputation crumbled faster than anyone expected. Then came the final blow. The district litigator's office opened an investigation into several of his past cases where evidence might have been manipulated. The statute of limitations shielded him from some charges, but his career was over. Jennifer filed for divorce 6 weeks after the scandal broke, unwilling to sink with a ship gone down. The prenuptial he had insisted on now became her safeguard, leaving his assets tied up in legal battles. Through it all, I kept Operation Kingfisher silent. The full truth I uncovered. Some secrets, I realized, are better left buried, not to protect the guilty, but to shield those who would suffer in the fallout. My mother's words echoed in my mind. She was right. Some fights aren't about exposure, but about using truth as leverage to survive. The cold spring breeze rustled the budding leaves as Claire Donovan sat on the porch, the fading light casting long shadows across her face. Her mind raced through months of battles fought and victories won, yet an uneasy doubt gnawed at her. The scent of rain lingered in the air, mingling with the rustle of new growth, but inside, everything felt unsettled. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message. No sender. No words. Just a chilling photo that threatened to upend everything she believed about her father and the case. The quiet evening shattered. Her heart pounded. What was this? Who sent it? And how much more was hidden beneath the surface? Justice had finally found its way, not through explosive leaks or courtroom drama, but by the slow, relentless unraveling of a carefully built empire. Claire watched from a distance as Richard Sullivan's world crumbled. The man who once seemed untouchable now struggled, isolated and broken, caught in legal battles with fading allies and dwindling resources. There was no triumph in his downfall, only the weight of a reckoning long overdue. Her mother wouldn't have wanted revenge. She would have understood accountability. The system her father had bent for decades had turned on him quietly, like a tide pulling away, exposing every crack. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, Claire sat on the small porch of her mother's house, watching the sunset paint the Philadelphia skyline in pink and gold. The home that had almost slipped away was now hers, a sanctuary filled with memories and new beginnings. Meanwhile, the fallout from Judge Mitchell's resignation rippled through the legal community. The Judicial Conduct Committee's report exposed bias and misconduct in dozens of cases, pushing his career to the edge. Richard's law practice dissolved under the pressure. His partners abandoned him, unwilling to face the scandal. Now, he worked alone in a modest office, handling cases for clients who could barely afford representation. The mighty Richard Sullivan, once a titan of the courtroom, was reduced to a shadow of his former self, defending the overlooked and forgotten. Their relationship remained tangled, a mix of unresolved tension, betrayal, and reluctant respect. Could justice heal what family had broken? Could Claire find peace when the lines between right and wrong blurred so dangerously close to home? The answers felt just out of reach, and the night was far from over. The scent of rain on dry pavement mixed with the rustle of autumn leaves outside as Claire Donovan and her father's uneasy silence filled the room. Their conversations were brief, awkward. Neither spoke of the past, of the pain buried beneath years of betrayal. Could I forgive him? No, not for what he'd done to my mother, nor for trying to take what little she left me. Yet, satisfaction in his downfall eluded me. He was still my father, flawed but not erased from my heart. In the wreckage, I found purpose. I used part of my inheritance to launch the Grace Bennett Justice Initiative, a foundation offering legal aid to those fighting corruption inside the system. It wasn't just a project, it was a tribute to my mother, a way to build something meaningful from all the fracture and loss. Slowly, I reconnected with her military friends, unveiling pieces of the woman she had been before my father's world took over. Barbara Linden became a frequent visitor, sharing stories that painted Mom in a new light: quiet courage, iron integrity. She never wanted that side of her life known, Barbara said as we sifted through fading photographs. Some truths come with burdens better left unpassed. Was she right to keep those secrets? I asked. Barbara's eyes grew distant. She protected more than just your father and Judge Mitchell. Good people who made mistakes to keep the bigger picture safe. Exposing everything might have hurt even the innocent. There was a long pause. Then she smiled gently. But I think she'd be proud of you, using the truth not as a weapon, but as leverage. That gave me some peace. I hadn't revealed every detail of Operation Kingfisher. I kept Mom's discretion sealed, while still chasing justice. Sometimes the hardest choices aren't about exposing all the darkness, but knowing where the light must stay hidden. Claire Donovan's mind drifted back to a rainy evening in her childhood Philadelphia home. She could still hear the steady drip of rain against the window pane, the faint scent of jasmine perfume blending with the musty smell of legal books lining her father's study. Upstairs, muffled voices argued, tense, sharp, filled with unspoken accusations. The silence that followed was heavier than words, pressing down on her young heart. That night marked the beginning of a lifelong struggle, a conflict between family loyalty and the pursuit of truth. Could she ever reconcile the man her father was with the justice he had denied her mother? The question haunted her every step. Now, as investigations widened around her father, Richard Sullivan, and Judge Mitchell, the charges were clear: legal and ethical violations. Nothing from hidden files or old secrets, but fresh wounds opened to light. Claire's world had shifted. Freed from the courtroom battles and her father's shadow, she found space to breathe, to grow. Michael entered her life, a kind-hearted architecture professor she met through a community garden project. Their bond wasn't built on power or control, but respect and shared values. Spring brought new beginnings. Then came the letter from Commander Phillips, a voice from her mother's past. "You handled a difficult situation with remarkable restraint," he wrote. "The easy path would have been full exposure, but you chose the harder road of measured response. Your mother made the same choice years ago. The apple did not fall far from the tree." His words stirred something deep inside Claire. She had spent her life trying to define herself apart from her parents, resisting her father's dominance and doubting her own strength compared to her mother's quiet resolve. But now she saw. She had inherited that very strength, the ability to stand firm, without tearing everything down. The lessons kept unfolding. Secrets could protect as much as they could hurt. Justice wasn't always loud or clean. It sometimes came through unexpected channels, demanding courage and wisdom in equal measure. Healing, she realized, didn't mean erasing the past or restoring broken bonds. Her relationship with her father would never be what it once was. The system that had failed her mother still had cracks, even after exposing corruption. Some scars remain, but Claire Donovan was no longer shackled by them. She was moving forward, stronger, wiser, ready to build a future on her own terms. In the fading light of dusk, Claire Donovan sits quietly in her mother's garden. The air is crisp, carrying the subtle scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine. Around her, leaves rustle softly, stirred by a gentle Philadelphia breeze. The distant city hum, sharp and relentless during the day, now feels miles away, as if time itself slows here. She exhales, long and steady. After years of legal battles and family wounds, the heavy weight on her shoulders begins to lift. But beneath her usual determination, vulnerability surfaces, raw and unexpected. Here, surrounded by the soft shadows and fading warmth, Claire confronts the tangled knot of her past. Her father, Richard Sullivan, the painful truths that fractured her family and the sacrifices she made to seek justice. She doesn't see her father as a villain anymore, not quite. She sees a man shaped by his own failures and flaws. Does justice always mean destruction? Or can it live in restraint, in the difficult choice to protect rather than punish? Her mother, Grace Bennett, lived by that belief, a quiet strength Claire never fully understood until now. Claire's fight was never just legal. It was moral, a battle between loyalty and truth, love and betrayal. She fought to expose corruption, not just in the courtroom, but within the very bloodline that defined her. This wasn't victory delivered with a bang. It was hard-earned, nuanced, and often lonely. As twilight deepens, Claire feels her mother's presence, not as a ghost, but as a guiding force. Grace's values carry forward in Claire's own resolve. Justice, Claire realizes, isn't always loud. Sometimes it is a whisper, a patient, steady light in a world clouded by shadows. She knows the scars will remain, some doors will never fully close, and the system that failed her mother still has cracks waiting to be uncovered. But today, Claire stands taller, stronger, ready to write a new chapter, one built on integrity, measured courage, and hope. What would you do if justice demanded you stand against those closest to you? When the lines between family and fairness blur, how do you find your way? Claire's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest battles bring the deepest peace. That strength comes not just from winning a fight, but from choosing how and when to fight. Not every war is won in a courtroom. Some are won in the quiet, beneath the fading light.